human first, set clear expectations, and boundaries. These three things are the things that great bosses, and by the way, great sponsors, all do. How do I know? Well, I've had the good luck of having some really great sponsors and some amazing bosses. Be human first. Nobody likes to work with or for someone who thinks that they are simply above it all, somehow better than you or infallible. So one of my favorite things that one boss, John, used to do was he would stop himself in the middle of a sentence, look at us around the table and say, that didn't make any sense, did it? Sorry about that. And he'd go back and he'd recap his thoughts. Now, it's not as if none of us have ever done that. And it's not as if we didn't expect him to be perfectly human. It's not like we thought that he was completely perfect and infallible. We knew he wasn't. It was his willingness to be that way in front of us. Now, some people nowadays call it vulnerability or transparency. But I call it being human first. Now, being human first doesn't mean lowering your standards for the people who work for you or work with you. It simply means that you also hold yourself accountable to those standards, and if by chance you fail, like spouting off two sentences in a row that make absolutely no sense, or having made an error in judgment, then you own it, you acknowledge it, you do your best after that to fix it. So be human first. Oh, speaking of which, I'm not entirely sure whether or not you can hear that in the background, but we're being serenaded by the pack of coyotes that tends to visit very early in the morning and fairly late in the afternoon. Don't worry, they're out there, and they're a little bit of scaredy cats. A couple of times, all we had to do was open the door, and boom, they would disappear. But that's part of the charm of being out in the desert. Let's see. Second, clear expectations. One of my very favorite bosses, and to this day someone I look up to, Diana, was very clear when you came on board to her team. She had expectations not just of how you would work as someone who worked for her, but also how you would work together. In other words, she didn't just have expectations of how you would behave, but she also wanted you to have expectations of how she would behave. And as far as she was concerned, there was a level of mutual accountability that was crucial. And it also demonstrated that first point I mentioned. It reinforced that she was just as human as the rest of us. And in a way, holding each other accountable. Not just one person saying, this is what you must do, but holding each other accountable was a great way of building trust. Last but not least, set boundaries. You're also going to need to have expressly set boundaries. Now, sometimes these boundaries are around time management. Again, Diana had a policy of do what I say, not as I do. And here's what I mean by that. She got cranky once because I responded to an email that she sent within 10 minutes of her sending it. Now, normally you would think that that would be something that would make a boss happy. Yeah, no. because she sent it at 3:30 in the morning and I responded at 3:45 in the morning. And when she scolded me about spending way too much time in front of the computer and online, she was in LA, by the way, and I was in the San Francisco Bay Area. I pointed out that the date stamp on her email to me wasn't exactly 8 o'clock in the morning by any standard. And she said, "That's my choice. But part of my responsibility is sometimes to help you take care of yourself. And that includes not working 19-hour days." We were in teleconferencing. That's what it was called in those days. It wasn't called Zoom. It wasn't called Adobe Connect or GoToMeeting. It was called teleconferencing or sometimes multimedia conferencing. And she said, "Look, we're not surgeons. We're not emergency responders. If you don't do something for 3 hours, nobody's life is at risk, except maybe yours, because you've been working too many 3-hour points." For some bosses, it's to set expectations, very clear expectations about whether or not you need action from them or not, and you would give them that in return. So I had one boss, and it was kind of weird, but Larry did this years and years and years and years before people were using email on a practically obsessive basis. He would always ask you to have in your subject line, whether it was information only, there was a problem, or please respond ASAP. And we used those codes that AT&T had proliferated throughout the world. 411 at the beginning of an email or a page. Yes, we used pagers then, not text messages. 411 at the beginning of that meant that this was just informational, just something I wanted you to know, so you didn't get surprised by something. 611, on the other hand, was, "This is a problem that I need your help with." Not probably need your help with, I need your help with this. 911 was, "Drop everything and please get back to me ASAP." 911 was usually used in a page, not an email. All of these behaviors, all of these things that great bosses do are also things that great sponsors do. First, the sponsor never promises you to do something that they're not sure they can do. They promise you they'll do their best, and then they do. Because be human first. Second, they set boundaries. There are the things that they expect you to handle entirely on your own. And there are the things that they expect you to keep them in the loop on. And then there are the things that they fully expect that you will call them on. Set boundaries. Set expectations. Understand what somebody thinks of as timely response. Understand when the communication plan is set up so that the sponsor is notified on an exception basis. But the expectation really is that you'll have informal check-ins as well. Not just the formal, every now and again, email because something has happened. But the informal, here's how we're doing. Here's what I see maybe coming down the road. If I need you, I'll probably, be right on you. But in the meantime, looks like we've got things handled this week. Does being virtual mean that we can no longer do that? It absolutely does not. It just means that we might need to use a different method. Instead of running into somebody in the hallway, you might want to just call them and leave a voicemail. Or send them a quick note in the email. Or, if you've got it, ping them on Teams. see if they're available for a quick one-on-one, and then just let them know. Because your bosses, your sponsors, they're not the only ones who should be very clear on expectations, boundaries, and remember, be human first. This video was brought to you by the Leadership Driven Project Management Academy. I'm Kimi Thanks for joining us.